One of the main jobs you're going to have in Google Ads is to try and get as many conversions as possible for as little cost as possible. But what if I told you that cheaper isn't always better? Sometimes it pays to pay more for your conversions. You probably think I'm crazy, but by the end of this video, I'm going to show you that I am deadly serious about that statement. So what am I talking about? What is the theory behind that statement of maybe cheaper not being best when it comes to conversions on Google Ads? Well, as you know, most people on Google Ads are running campaigns using smart bidding, whether that is a maximized conversion strategy with a target CPA or a maximized conversion value strategy with a target ROAS. These bidding strategies are basically predictive algorithms, meaning that when Google predicts that somebody is going to convert with a high likelihood, they will push your bids up in order to try and get the click for that person who could be very likely to convert. And conversely, if somebody is not very likely to convert, but they are still showing on your keywords, Google can bring the bids back down to kind of reflect the risk of showing to that person based on the fact that they're not necessarily the most likely type of user to convert. Remember, Google has a very data-driven view of every single user of its service. So when somebody goes to Google and types something in, it has a very high level of prediction of that person's behavior in the past. They use a ton of signals, most of which we can't even see or get access to, in order to inform these predictions. So let's walk through an example to frame what I mean about cheap versus expensive conversions. Say, for example, somebody is looking for a landscape gardener and all of their behaviors online and within Google's network show a high probability of converting. Maybe they've looked at turf options on a various number of different e-commerce websites already. Maybe they've looked at kind of video inspiration on YouTube, looking at different types of garden landscaping options. Their whole behavior shows they are very much in market for this service, and when they go to Google, they are going to be very likely to convert. And say they do that, they go to Google and type in landscape gardener London, and they really want to get a quote, they really want to convert, and all of Google's signals show that this person is very much in market right now. Now let's flip things around. Say you are the business offering landscape gardening to a customer. You want that click. You definitely want that click based on all of the behaviors that Google has shown that they've exhibited. You want that click, but also don't forget your competitors want that click too, because of course you're not alone on the Google search results page. You're going to have competition as well, and they want that click too. So what happens? What are the implications of this? Well, naturally, the bidding algorithm is going to increase bids in order to try and get that click ahead of your competitors. But of course, your competitors want this person too, so their campaign will also increase the bids on this person searching because they are very likely to convert. So here we have a scenario where you have two different advertisers. Well, although I'm showing two in this example, there will be many more out there who also want the click as well. And Google is pushing the bids up for everyone. Everyone really wants this person's click. So now we know everybody wants this click. We need to talk about the limiting factors that stop people from getting that click. Of course, one of the biggest factors in ad rank and your visibility on Google Ads is going to be your CPC bid. And of course, if Google is setting that on your behalf, they're going to push it very high. Now, imagine a scenario where you are running a campaign in the landscape gardening industry against this person who's searching, and your target CPA is £30. However, things haven't been great of late. Your campaign is actually underachieving on its target, and generally in the last 30 days or maybe a couple of weeks, you're achieving an average CPA of £35 or £40, which means you're basically under target in terms of where Google's bidding algorithm needs to be. For Google to hit your target, it has to bring bids down in order to come in at that £30 CPA target. It will start bringing things down, squeezing on volume and squeezing on its bidding in order to get to your goal for your campaign. So now let's go back to that competitor. Say for argument's sake, they don't have the same challenges as you. They're willing to pay £40 for a conversion, and they've had pretty good data for the last 14 days or 30 days, which means that their target is basically on target. They're achieving their £40 CPA. So you have you with a £30 CPA, and they have a £40 CPA target. They have 10 more pounds to move in order to achieve that target than you do. So because of these limitations, because of that limitation on your CPA target versus your competitor, because of that limitation on recent performance, meaning Google has to bid less aggressively, you could miss out on that very important click. In a lot of terminology, this is known as a premium auction, the kind of auction where somebody is really likely to convert. Everybody's bids go up, and your CPC for this particular auction is incredibly high, but because of the high conversion likelihood, statistically speaking, if you get that click, you're more than likely to get a conversion. And Google's bidding algorithm understands this. So in a nutshell, what this really means is, in a world where everybody is on smart bidding, sometimes the most expensive clicks are sometimes the most high value clicks in some scenarios. But we're talking in hypotheticals, and I want to give you a real story to reinforce exactly what I'm talking about. I work with a lead gen business in the property space, and she said to me when we started working together, I will be very happy if you could achieve a £20 cost per lead in my campaign. I'll be more than happy with that because that's a really low cost per lead. It's kind of the ballpark I need, and let's go ahead and achieve that. So working with her on her campaign, her ads, her website strategy, and a number of other factors, we got the cost per lead down to £20. And you know, you think to yourself, job done. That's perfection. We've achieved exactly the cost per lead we wanted. We've worked together and done that. But something interesting happened. Being the good business operator that she is, she backs all of her leads up with a CRM system, which means every single lead that is captured, we'll know whether or not it converted into business, and we know the value of that lead in monetary terms as well. So we have a good data set as to the performance of lead quality in the campaign. So the funniest thing happened. As soon as we lowered the cost per conversion down to £20, which meant that we got a lower cost per conversion and also way more volume of conversions, what we saw in the back end on the CRM is the conversion rate of lead into sale massively nosedived, and so did the total predicted revenue based on lead value and of course closed sale value as well. So overall in the campaign, things looked amazing. We got a great cost per lead. Things looked perfect. We saw that lovely upwards graph that everybody likes to see, but in the back end, revenue was down. So of course, you don't just carry on what you're doing and continue on the same vein when revenue keeps declining. You reverse. So we ended up pushing the CPA target back up, and in some cases across some of the key services she offered, we actually increased the CPA target beyond what was initially set as well, to be a bit more aggressive to try and make up some of that shortfall in the business. Of course, you can imagine what I'm going to tell you happened, and of course, revenue returned, lead to sale conversion rate improved in the campaign, and overall things started ticking upwards again from a revenue perspective. Even though in the Google Ads account it looks like we increased things and improved things and then it started tailing off again, it didn't tail off in reality because on the back end in the revenue, things were moving forward and things were increasing. So what this means in this very specific example is that cheaper leads were genuinely lower value than more expensive leads. And the theory I gave you at the start of this video around why that could be seems to have held true for this advertiser. So overall, what is the takeaway from this? What can you learn from this story and from this kind of information? Well, the first lesson isn't to jump into your Google Ads account and increase your CPA target because Darren said so, because it's going to give you better quality conversions. That's not what I'm saying. Remember, everything we did was backed by that CRM data. We could measure the increase in performance as we made those changes on the back end. If you have a CRM system, it's really important you start measuring these metrics of lead to sale and average order value, because when you make changes in your campaign, those factors can change as well. So if you are noticing that when you're lowering the cost per lead in the campaign, if you're noticing a decline in lead quality, it could well be the same situation that my client was going through. This advice also applies to people looking to scale their account as well, because as you know, Google will only offer you more auctions if you're willing to pay more for your traffic, and you do genuinely hit this ceiling where your CPA target needs to increase in order to increase the amount of traffic going through your campaign. When you get to that point, your CPA is always going to be higher than before, but one of the interesting things to measure is to see what your lead to sale conversion rate does, and also what your average order value does as well, because you could be quite surprised what could happen. You could see both of those things increase. Even though your leads on Google Ads are more expensive, you're making more revenue. Like many other moments in my Google Ads career spanning 13 years and over $50 million of ad spend, this was a big lesson for me. And if you want to hear about my biggest 5 lessons all time since running Google Ads in that time in my career, click the video on screen now where I break it down for you, and hopefully you learn from the mistakes I made and see where Google Ads is going in the future.